Hello everybody, Phil Henry from the Capricornia Chamber of Commerce here again with our next interview for a candidate for the Mayor of Livingston Shire, and that's Andy Ireland, who's with me at the moment. So Andy, while the full impacts of the COVID-19 virus are still being felt, and basically this interview is about the next 4 years term of government, but have you got any immediate thoughts about the impact of COVID-19 on business and industry in the region?
Yeah, well, Phil, clearly the impact of COVID-19 is being felt worldwide, and we're very fortunate in Australia. We've got our federal and state health authorities helping us work through that process, but clearly the impact on SMEs in Livingston is a key focus. So I think what would be a great initiative to start with, if Council could, through their website, put up some information around where, for example, the incentive packages can be found, some links for that, and some explanatory notes around it, because some of those things can be quite complicated, as you well know. Secondly, I think it would be great if some staff through Livingston could be made available to help people who want to apply for assistance packages through that, and assist them through the application process, because those too can be quite complicated. And thirdly, I think really the message should be continue to buy locally, because if we keep money in our economy, locally we continue to support our SMEs, and they continue to employ people.
All right, so we'll now talk about the next 4 years and what you might like to do. So first question, what do you think is the ideal mix of industry sectors for the Shire, and what steps do we need to take to ensure that we've got a balanced economy locally?
Okay, well at the moment there's a number of industry sectors that operate in Livingston. So for example, we've got health, clearly, we've got education, we've got agriculture, we've got the resources sector, to name a few. So all of those intermingle here within Livingston very effectively, and obviously we clearly need to continue to support those. What gives me encouragement is the Community Plan 2050. Now within that document, as you all know, that was actually a document auspiced by Council, and it drew people from the community. So it wasn't a document prepared by Council, and it wasn't a document prepared by Council officers. It was a document prepared by members of the community. And within that process, the members of the community identified a number of key areas for future development and future growth going forward. So they were sort of around the ones we mentioned: tourism, and within tourism things like agri-tourism, eco-tourism, sports tourism, which is potentially a big one for here, and so on, as well as renewables, continuing to support the education sector, agriculture, and those sort of things. So I think really in terms of a mix, we continue to follow the edict from the community in the community plan, and we use that as the platform for going forward.
Now let's talk about the planning scheme. Suppose, for example, 10,000 new residents came into the Shire over the next 10 years. Where should we put them, and what form of housing? Detached, medium density, high density? What's the ideal place to cater for that kind of growth?
I've always believed that would be determined by the market, in a sense. But one of the things that we're very fortunate to have in this Shire is plenty of land. And in terms of growth and development, which is something obviously we want to do to be able to improve our financial situation, grow our rates base, put downward pressure on rates, is to encourage that sort of growth. Now, clearly we've got to have jobs, we've got to have industry and business here to be able to sustain the residential development that you're talking about. So for mine, I think the planning scheme needs to be flexible enough to accommodate that, and obviously then the market sector will dictate what happens from there.
So talking about the basis for business and industry, what are the key infrastructure needs for this Shire for the next 4 years, or even a little bit further on from that?
Yeah, look, I think moving around the community, the clear message I'm getting is that we need to go back to basics in a sense. We've built lots of new infrastructure over the last 4 to 6 years, which is great, but in moving around the community, I'm getting a clear message, particularly from the rural areas, that things like rural roads are in a very poor state. Urban roads are in a poor state, and we need to concentrate again on our water and sewage infrastructure and make sure that they are up to speed, because if we're going to experience the 10,000 new homes that you're talking about, then clearly we need to have that infrastructure in place so all of that works. Now, the basis on which we do all of that is asset management planning. And I think one of the issues in Livingston that's historically been happening is that asset management planning has not been done as well as it should have been. And hence we have situations now like where we have our rural roads in such disarray. So For mine, it's about getting that asset management planning happening, making sure we do those condition assessments on a regular basis, and ensuring that we have enough money allocated within our budgetary process to make sure that those assets are kept to the best optimal condition.
Might just revert to COVID-19 for the moment. Now, you might have seen in the paper that the Capricornia Chamber of Commerce joined with a broader statewide initiative from CCIQ to talk to councils about the potential to give businesses relief from rates, charges and fees. To the best of your knowledge, what's the scope for that here in Livingston?
Well, again, to the best of my knowledge, but certainly nothing should be off the table. I mentioned a few things before that Livingston could potentially do, but in rates, fees and charges relief for businesses, particularly those who are looking at investing or employing new staff, on the table.
Yeah.
Rates relief on the table for discussion. Now, clearly, it's not just the Mayor's decision. It will be a decision of Council. But all of those things need to be on the table. One of the other things I've been basically proposing in various forums is that when COVID-19 eventually dissipates and we return to normal, in inverted commas, it would be great if we could start boosting the community's confidence again, because we're all going to take a hit from this. And personally, I feel as though that in my sense, my business, for example, we will take a hit. So it's all about trying to build up our confidence again. So some events going forward, maybe tied to tourism, maybe tied to community. But essentially, if we can get some of those events happening and people come out, they spend money, they support our local businesses, and rebuild what we've got, because this is an awesome community. We've bounced back from lots of things. We've bounced back from cyclones and bushfires, and we'll bounce back from this. There's no two ways about it.
So it's a fairly allied question, but in common with a lot of country towns and places, got a fair few empty shops in the main street here. What can be done to redress that situation?
Yeah, a really interesting question on that one. And my mind goes to what happened in Newcastle. And it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but we'll have to get the majority of landlords on board with this. But in Newcastle, what they did was approach the landlords and say, look, you've got a vacant shop, you're getting no rent revenue coming in, so how about we use your space, and you allow us to use your space to assist some fledgling businesses and some fledgling artists and sculptors and things like that. They can use your premises to showcase their products and their services. That way, we've got someone in your shop, the CBD looks pretty vibrant and will draw more people in. So I thought that was a fantastic initiative that came out of Newcastle, and something that we could potentially look at here. One of the other things we obviously need to do is ramp up the activities of Council's Economic Development Unit, and certainly getting a good solid strategic plan for not only the Yeppoon CBD but for Emu Park, all the other localities within Livingston, get an overarching strategic plan, economic development plan to sort of take us forward.
Thanks, Andy. So before we wrap up, any final thoughts from you?
Look, for me, this campaign is about a number of things, and my platform essentially is about growth, but it's also about being a one Shire. And so, going forward, I'm all about inclusion of all areas of the Shire, and I think over the last number of years, things have been a little bit coastal centric, but certainly going forward, my emphasis is going to be on a holistic Shire. No doubt about it in my mind, rates is the key issue for this election. So that's got to be a key focus for the new council, as is financial management.
Andy Ireland, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, Phil.